I don't think you're ready for this video. To be honest, I don't even think I'm ready for this video. I've been avoiding to make a full-length video talking about some of my thoughts around men, patriarchy, the safety of women, how our pursuit for the magical other, the forever after, has been an intentional brainwash to keep us disconnected and in denial of the truth in the experience that we're seeing. Not only our own experience, but the history of women before us that has shown an undeniable fact that much of women's suffering comes from the hands of men. And on top of that, it usually comes from the hands of men that they know. So it's not even strangers. Men who are emotionally attached to us proclaim protection. But I'll tell you that I don't think there's a man that can hate you more than a man you have an emotional attachment with. Than a man that is emotionally invested in you, meaning needs you in order to feel something. Accepted, loved, inspired, good enough. Rejection hurts everybody, but with men walking around with the sensitivity to rejection, they end up resenting those who reject them, much like they resent their own mothers. So they bring in the emotional attachment of the mother to every situation, much like we all do with everyone. But there's a big difference here. A woman that doesn't like men is just a woman that doesn't like men. Worst case scenario, she'll say something mean to a man and the man is going to get offended. But a man who hates women, men who have hated women because these women no longer satisfied whatever position these men wanted them to be, has more consequences. Put simply, what we are now doing, right, when we're trying to speak up about men and patriarchy, and men will say, oh, you're so mean. So you hate all men now, right? You're a misandrist and you're supposed to be ashamed for that. And so basically men are telling you, I can't believe you're hurting my feelings like that. I can't believe you're overgeneralizing about every man that you've ever known. And now I'm taking offense from that. But I'm not offended by what my fellow men are doing. I'm offended by you speaking up about it and including me in that category, which I sadly know I belong in, but can't do anything because I'm a man and patriarchy sucks for everybody. But I'm not here to talk about that side, at least not today. Because put very simply, misandry, which really is not even hating men, is more like speaking up against men, but men have been concluding that whoever speaks up against what men are doing is being hateful towards all men. So we're speaking up against the behavior, but suddenly we're being told that we are hating the whole species. I don't think it's hatred, but in my own understanding, it's more like disappointment, disillusionment of who we thought men would be, because we've been told that men come in shiny armors that save us from our lives, that will turn us into queens and we're going to live in castles happily ever after with men. But usually it's miserably ever after, or if we're lucky enough, is a tolerable level of misery that we can kind of sustain. We can show off a little bit on social media to be tolerable, but that's fine. We've been used like sacrificial lambs so that men can continue to exist in the world by having kids, by having their kids. But before I say this, I want to explain something about that. And if you're a man and this triggers you, you can stay or you can go. But obviously this video is for women, right? It's for women that want to hear someone share some thoughts about some joint experience that we have. But misandry is just you not liking a man. And the consequences of that is you just rejecting men, which in the long term has this global feeling of you're not going to let them have kids. It's a prohibition to continue to exist. It's in a more long-term perspective, but it still is somewhere there, right? At least you're not going to do it. But misogyny is actively and in the moment hurting women because they don't want you. So you're punishing them for rejecting you by enforcing yourself onto them, by humiliating them, by destroying any sense of their dignity, because you need this victorious sense, this elation of revenge for women, against women. My theory with that has a little bit of Freud in it. And I know people have said many of the things that Freud has said were, of course, sexist, and of course, patriarchal, and of course, this, and of course, the other. But if we are being very, very honest, the atmosphere where Freud grew up and was socialized is not so different than the one we have now for the core part, right? So whatever he withdrew based on the society he was experiencing, and of course himself, because he was probably a giant baby on his own, giant baby with a capacity to think deeply and to, in my opinion, introspect very well, in the sense that he was observing a lot of his behaviors. So the complexes that he came up, especially when it comes to mother and son, which were taken literal, and in my opinion, they were not literal. And I guess Jung afterwards expanded on the fact that some of these things were just symbols. But for the grander scheme of things, and the way I view what I know so far and what I have been observing, is that men have never overcome their first maternal wound, which was being rejected by their mother. The frustration when they realized that their mother is not going to be there forever to cater to their every need. But worry not, because patriarchy came up with a system that said, don't worry, your mom is going to stop doing that to the fullest extent. But your sisters are going to chip in, and everybody's going to chip in, and everybody's going to take care of you so that you never need to do any of that on your own. All your emotional needs. The world is your conduit. Women are here to serve you. They're going to take care of your emotions. They're going to take care of your anger. They're going to take care of the fact that you need offsprings. They're going to take care of your needs. And they're going to do that by being submissive, because we will promise them that your acceptance will give them the happiness they need. You approving them, you choosing them, you marrying them. But also, in addition to that, you're the only access for her to reach her ultimate, most divine potential, which is to have kids. In my opinion, the biggest potential of a woman is not that she can birth the kids, although birth on its own is a whole different thing, but is that she can choose to bring life into the world. And she can either let it happen or stop it. So a woman's body can host both life and death. in its very existence, and it can be decided from her who lives and who dies. And as I said before, society hasn't changed too much in terms of how this has always been a control based on women's superpower to choose life, not just bring life, to choose life. Because woman was told, great, you bring life, you get to choose life. No, you know what? We're going to let you bring the life because we need you to bring the life, but we're not going to allow you to choose who stays and who goes. We will. That's why you have a bunch of old men having meetings deciding on women's most ultimate power, right? If you think about the power they took the most was our ability to choose. And the other thing that they did, that patriarchy did, is we never learned our worth outside of men. So if a woman doesn't know she's worthy without a man, that's the key. So man shows up to solve a problem created by man. Woman's low self-worth and woman's pursuit of this ultimate transcendence of her existence to become a mother of 10 children that she then has to take care of for the rest of her life, on top of the 11th children, which is going to be her husband. And I always think, I talk a little bit more about this on other platforms. I'm a little bit more expressive around my thoughts around this topic. But I always feel like, do I always have to give the disclaimer? Not all men. Oh, some men are like this. Not everybody. But the older I get and the more I see things, the more I realize that in one way or the next, it's going to end up being all men, because if it's not, it means men are not taking accountability for what they've been doing or what they've been participating in doing, what they've observed to happen, Some events happened recently that got me thinking, one of which was with that young lady doctor in India. And what struck me the most, what was so scary to me, it's not that somebody showed up and decided to abuse her brutally, right? It's that allegedly there was about 20 people there who all agreed with such a degree of violence against a woman who was absolutely no physical threat to them. And if there was any other thing, you would think, right, well, they could have just ended her life and that's it. If they wanted to silence her, and that's the drive. The drive behind such abuse is not just to silence, is to overpower, is to humiliate, is to degrade you of any value that you think you have, and to become the most powerful being in this world. They want to become the ones that choose life or death. And as it usually happens, they choose the latter. They chose the latter. Now, men have always relied on women to be the vessel that brings their offspring into this world, because men were taught that if their legacy no longer exists, they were nobody. And what's interesting about that is that mythology, although it is mythology, and of course other disciplines with the ology ending are also mythology, but not as accepted just yet. But when mythology existed, it used to be religion, right? The Greek mythology. And the thing about mythology, now retrospectively looking at it, is that although it was based on myths, those myths were created based on the collective unconscious of the people at the time. Because if you now want to come up with a myth, for example, you're going to come up with a myth that speaks but doesn't really, or kind of, or warns, or includes events of what is happening now in the world. So within stories and fairy tales and music, it has always been the case. Whatever is being portrayed there is a representation, or this influence, of course, of what is happening in the collective unconscious. And so a very important thing about Greek mythology, I don't know how much you know about it, which is I find fascinating. And I will link a video series that I absolutely love. You watch it like a soap opera, right? It's mythology. Let's have that clear. But it's the soap opera of the times. But before, for them, it was religion. Now it became a soap opera. What was very impressive, what was very noticeable is that Zeus, which was like the god, the king of the gods, had this thing about always sleeping with women. And he would go out of his way to conquer any woman he wanted, even if he wasn't supposed to get her, right? And what he would do is he would transform, listen to this, he'd transform in all sorts of things, from human to this to the other, to make sure that he sleeps with them and impregnates them. He had to have more offspring and continue the legacy of his godlike self. But then these women always had very big consequences from having his kids, either because his wife was punishing them or whatever was happening. It wasn't easy to bring the child of a man, God, into the world. And hold on. And that definitely represents a lot of what we can collectively understand about today, although we're not talking about Zeus. Although they're not transforming into reptiles or other animals, they're just pretending to be nice. They're pretending to be kind. They're pretending to be feminist. They're pretending to be honest. They're pretending to be single. I read this thing and I always say it. I find it so hilarious. There's not a man more single than a married man. So much of what was collectively the theme then, for which, they were exaggerating in that way, is the collective theme of now. So this did not start yesterday or last year or 100 years ago. The dynamic between men and women has been going towards the same direction for many years. And women have been adapting to the role that they've been given, in a way fawning to the enemy that became their husband. So women basically had to procreate with their perpetrator and had to fawn and pretend to be less than, to be safe from men. And they knew that the only way to do that is to pretend that they let men decide anything, and they're allowing men to do anything, and they're saying okay to men. And that shows because so many women have been conditioned in the nice girl type of attitude and sheer codependency, really. And they have all the characteristics that you need in order to control someone. No sense of worth, no sense of self, no boundaries, and only fixated on the approval of the man. Women have been built to become a certain way that matches so well this persona, what is becoming the archetypal persona of the collective consciousness data of who the man is, right? Besides whatever Jung said about the masculine, whatever things people are saying about divine masculinity and what a man is supposed to do, the collective observation and generalization, of course, about men is more under the lens of someone very narcissistic, entitled, no empathy, expects women to cater to all of his needs, throws tantrums if she doesn't, and abuses their authority. It's like you give a 10-year-old the ability to choose what happens to other people. And the first thing they choose is violence, because the root of both of who we are as humans, women or men, is a sense of unworthiness. That in the years and the years and the years that have passed from us growing up feeling unworthy, because our environments have always been not so validating of our worth, we've responded differently to that sense of unworthiness. And women leaned towards fawning, and what was then capitalized upon, patriarchy, was like, a man is going to choose you, you're going to find your worth, you're going to be a great wife, you're going to be a great mother, there's your worth, go ahead and pursue it. And men were like, don't worry, your worth is to become better than your father, make more money than your father, be super powerful, have everybody respect you and fear you. And go ahead and pursue that. So different directions, but there's a joint sort of goal, because we need each other. Women needs this part of the man to then have the kids. Man needs the part of the woman to then continue his legacy and not be forgotten. Man was only as influential and as, his life had as much meaning as his legacy, right? His obsession to leave something behind so that we can remain what? Like the Olympus gods, immortal. In our pursuit of immortality, we've been on this vanity, on this vain thing that we then called love and romance and marriage and happy ever after imprisonments, right? And woman's best day of her life is the day where she dresses up like a bride, and it's her most important day, which is, quite ironic that the biggest day of your life is essentially has signified the first day of your emotional, physical slavery to a man who's going to abuse you. If you look behind of what marriage has been, beyond the arrangement, it was the agreement that a woman would serve her man. Do you know that there's this thing, I don't know if it's in every type of church, but there was a Greek article. Supposedly, when you're getting married, there's this something, the priest says something about the woman should fear the man, right? And now modern feminist women are going to step on their man when that's said as a sign, yeah, whatever, right? Like, cute way to say it's not going to happen. And this woman did it. Like, it's a custom, right? It's not an aggressive thing. It's just something people laugh at, which is a microaggression from the part of the woman, but I don't know how much it applies in their life afterwards, right? It's just the thing that they do. And then apparently this guy was so upset that he slapped her, and there was a big fight, right? They had to stop the service, and then they got married. Because happy forever after matters more than what is actually going to happen in the happy forever after. The milestone is get the happy forever after. What happens next doesn't really matter. Or if it's not as good as you thought it would be, it's probably your fault. So I'm saying all of these thoughts because I'm just thinking about so many things today. My mom came here and said, did you see that there's women who they're forcing them and not allowing them to sing anymore? And I said, do you think that's radical? It's just a more obvious way to say to women, to silence women, to degrade women, to control women, to make women feel that they're unworthy. And their only contribution is their body, because that's what a man wants to use. Either because he wants to live the legacy, or because he needs a body to entertain himself with. Women have been used until women have decided that, oh, I'm only as good as I am needed, as I am useful. So we make codependency a nice girl, quiet girl, our personality. We fawned to our own oppressors. At the same time, we're looking down on our own oppressors. We see them as the big kids that they are. And we're like, it's okay, I got it under control. I got it under control. Then he hurts your sons, your daughters. You choose him. You're like, I have to stay committed. He's good. He chose me. What's the world going to say? What's this going to say? So, what am I saying today, really? I think I will leave every woman to reflect on herself what it is that I'm saying. And I think if in every woman's heart exists this flame that wants to resist to all of this, that sees the reality of the fairy tales, of the oppression, of the niceness. A woman who is fed up being resentful, used, abused, doing so much labor for everyone. A woman constantly looking for the affirmation of the man. And when she gets it, she's now living a life with a constant confirmation that she's not valued for any more than what she does, even if so. The two things that women need, I guess there's more than two, but I would say is to reclaim their sense of worth and to reconnect with their sense of anger and allow themselves to finally set boundaries and expectations, not to the bare minimum, but to the maximum high, with the risk that this will mean that they will not fulfill the roles they've been told they must fulfill, but they will indeed self-actualize, meaning that they've evolved themselves through a journey of self-exploration, of finding their worth, of finding the inner compass of who they want to be and where they want to go, no longer driven by what men expect and want from her. Because the self-actualization for a woman is not a happy forever after photo of her getting married in a very nice fancy dress. Much like that movie on Netflix, Damsel or something. Let me figure it out. Damsel, where this woman is getting, like she got this offer to marry he's beautiful prince and amazing castle and stuff. And right after the wedding, they go have this ritual. And the ritual is basically she's joining blood with this man, right? Scratching her hands, scratching his, putting them together. So she has now royal blood. And then he picks her up and then he throws her into a dungeon or more like some sort of cliff in a place where a dragon lives that wants to eat young brides. And that for me was like the depiction, right, of what we think we're heading towards. And we're so oblivious to look at the signs that exist of what we're really getting ourselves into. And so we're sold the fairy tales. We use no discernment. We have no boundaries. We have no sense of worth. And even when we see some signs, we're like, yeah, but where do I go? How do I find a new one? Because the end goal of that picture is so radicalized in us, so engraved in our hearts, that prevents us from seeing the truth about the people who choose to act on that and find that. Because the happy forever after is not a static picture, it's not emotion for 5 seconds, hey, we're happy. And there's an after. There's a real after. And within that after, things can happen that could be different than what happened in the before. But if we don't have financial power, if we don't have a sense of worth, if we continue to believe in fairy tales, if we have low self-worth, if we have no friendships with other women to protect us, and if we're not in touch with what is happening, then we're probably going to stick around and stay miserable in an imprisonment that we chose for ourselves, that we come back out from because we're a failure if we do. So these are my thoughts for today. I hope they have served something in your heart and have awoken not only your sense of worth, but that powerful rage that resides in each and one of you. And to trust that this rage is not catastrophic. You know, woman's rage is not what men are doing with their rage. Woman's rage is waking her up to her value. The value that she has been forced to forget and to then place upon being chosen by man, by any man at this point. That's it for me today. I'll see you guys soon.